agreement being worked on right now would further reduce the deficit by asking the wealthiest 2% of Americans to pay higher taxes for the first time in 2 decades.
Really? Reduce the deficit? Well, you know what? That did not take long. All of that new tax money President Obama drummed up in the fiscal cliff deal by raising rates in the upper brackets is gone. Congress spending it all in just one vote. That $50 billion Sandy aid bill, Ford O'Connell and Mattie Duppler says this is proof positive that tax hikes alone won't be what fixes our debt mess. Ford.
That's absolutely right. Essentially, members of Congress, particularly Democrats, are more concerned with avoiding a backlash of public opinion and getting reelected than help putting America back on a path of fiscal sanity. You know, just because we actually got additional revenue doesn't mean they're going to be fiscally savvy, and that's what, you know, America's up against.
You know, Mattie, you know, this fiscal cliff fight and the election, it was just so ugly. I mean, there was a whole group of taxpayers and small businesses and entrepreneurs that were attacked. And basically now we're seeing the president whipping fastballs by the American people. The money didn't go toward the deficit. Clearly, the American people are much smarter than that. What do you make of that?
Right. Well, listen, it's only going to get uglier because we know this from what the president has told us. Every year he puts out a budget. Every year we see that it adds to the debt by trillions and trillions over the next 10 years. And it's because it doesn't matter how much he taxes the American people. This isn't about taxing the rich. It's about growing the size of government. He wants to continue spending, and the only way to fund that spending is to try and get as much money out of the American people as possible. And as you said before, you can't even get close with trying to tax businesses, entrepreneurs, the people who are actually trying to drive this country. You don't get there. You can't pay for the Obama budget through taxing them. So what we're going to be doing is going deeper into debt, not dealing with the entitlements and the rest of the mandatory spending that's actually really killing this economy. And you see this right here. You know, first day back in session, we've got the Senate voting on a bill that is going to increase spending by $60 billion. The House wasn't willing to pass an amendment that would offset that spending by just making small rescissions elsewhere. And we see this with Congress. They're unwilling to actually pay for this spending, and instead want to keep throwing money at a problem that money simply can't solve.
You know, Hurricane Sandy hit Ford, the section of the U.S. that was the size of Western Europe. I mean, it was devastating. We know that. We know that that $50 billion aid, hey, not all of the money is going to go toward, you know, helping out these victims. A lot of it's going to go to other spending on other items. Do you find that to be a problem, that this bill was sold as helping Sandy, but we're seeing all sorts of other things loaded into it?
Well, that's exactly right. It's galling. In fact, less than 50% of the money is actually going to disaster relief for the victims of Sandy. Well, we're sending money to fisheries in hurricane-ravaged Alaska, and we're going to work on the roof of the Smithsonian Institute. I can see how that was affected by Sandy, right? Not. As usual, the powers in naming things, Congress is hiding pet projects underneath, basically piggybacking off of disaster and sympathy, and this is why we are 15 to 16 trillion in debt. And until the American people hold folks in Congress and the president, you know, accountable for this, this is going to continue. So I agree with Mattie. We've got to get to the crux of the problem. The problem right now is that the American people just aren't paying attention, and Congress is getting away with murder.
You know, Mattie, you are an astute observer, as Ford is, of what is going on in the D.C. political scene. Has the American people sort of sensed this, but it hasn't been articulated? And let me explain. You pointed out, too, to us that it seems like Congress is playing fiscal cliff every time, that everything is now an emergency, that everything is an exigency. And, you know, at a time when the Senate has not passed, you know, a budget bill, in 4 years, we know that, and at the same time there's this unseemly food fight over pork. Are we in a new era of, I hate to say it, but deficit spending?
No, you hit it right in the head. The problem is we have a Senate that is unwilling to budget because they don't want to commit this ludicrous spending to paper. They don't want the American people to be able to see, yes, we are intent on bankrupting the country. They instead use measures like this, like emergencies, you know, using these exigent circumstances to say we need to throw money at a problem and we can't tell you how we're going to fix it yet because we don't want to write it down. We know it's that bad. So until we have a Senate that passes a budget, until we have lawmakers who are unwilling to see the the American people as an endless trough of money, you're right. We're going to have a hard time fixing these problems and focusing on the drivers of our debt. So Americans have a real reason to be concerned, but we did see that the Tea Party is still well and alive, still holding Congress accountable, trying to get them to work on spending. And I think in the next few months, where we're talking about the debt limit, we're talking about the continued funding for the government, we might see some changes there, and hopefully we're able to exact some change.
Quickly, we have a little bit of time left. When you think about what's going on in Washington, D.C., essentially the theme there is that, look, the government can fix the economy. We're betting on, blowing out the deficit because we're going to get economic growth from all of that spending. What do you make of that?
Well, I don't know how we're going to get economic growth from this type of spending because we have so much uncertainty. And essentially, Congress is just not being, its feet are not being held to the fire. And it's unfortunate because this is the greatest country on earth. We can actually fix these problems, but right now there's very little interest in Congress, and certainly not within the executive branch to do it, because really, if we have growth, we're going to have opportunity, and many of our biggest problems will be fixed.
Okay. All right. Ford O'Connell, you are the of the Civic Forum PAC, and also Mattie Duppler is with Americans for Tax Reform. You two have been terrific. I'm really pleased that you're with us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Next up.